Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We have arrived kind of at the doorstep of Summer League, although it doesn't actually start for little under a week. But it feels like we're like right there. It feels like we've been through the rigmarole, and now we're ready to see some exciting Knicks basketball. But of course, we have to tie up some loose ends over what happened over the last week and change. And who better to do that than the one and only Jeremy Cohen? Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello, John. I'm doing great now that the majority of free agency frenzy is behind us. You know, there's no greater feeling than waking up from a short sleep because you stay up late to see if any news breaks. Then see also no news breaking in the morning, knowing you stayed up later for no reason. And
when did you start feeling comfortable, like not comfortable going to bed, but like comfortable that nothing was going to happen when you were sleeping?
I think it was the night of July 3rd. Knowing,
okay.
Like, all right, it'll get resolved.
July 3rd into July 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And since then, it's just been, what? I can't plan my life any more than I already have around a basketball team that is potentially waiting on other dominoes. So I'm just going to keep living my life and hope for the best.
All you could do is live your life, Jeremy, and you do it as well as anyone. So here's how this episode is going to go. So Jeremy's got our final, I think it's our final, right? Cap or no cap of the offseason.
We'll see.
Like these things are fluid. We never can really tell when something's gonna shake loose. But as of now, it seems like it's going to be the last one of consequence. Obviously, there's some, and we'll touch on it. There's some, maybe a domino or two that still needs to fall. I assume those are going to be smaller dominoes, if anything, at this point. But you never know. Crazy things have happened. But before that, we do have some news to recap, some stuff that's happened over the last several days. And I should also say, for anybody wondering, I don't even know if you know this, Jeremy, there's an important event happening right now as we are recording. It is 7:10 p.m. on Sunday, July 7th. Are you aware of what I'm talking about?
Does it have to do with basketball being played?
Yes.
Is it happen to be with the season?
No.
Perhaps not spring, winter, or fall, but summer?
No.
Oh.
Well, no. There may be summer league games in the California League going on right now. I honestly have no idea. No. The final game of the FIBA World Olympic Qualifying Tournament is taking place right now between Puerto Rico and Lithuania.
Mm-hmm.
A member of Lithuania's team, of course, is Rokas Jokubaitis. And about a month ago, Steph Bondy reported that if Lithuania qualified for the Olympics, Rokas Jokubaitis would not be coming to Summer League. But if they did not qualify, there was a chance he would come over and play during Summer League. As I speak to you right now, we are in the third quarter of that game, and Puerto Rico is up 50-39. So I will continue to monitor that game as we record this podcast. I guess we should be rooting against Lithuania, right? If we want to see Rokas.
That's exactly where I'm at. It's considered we're both going to be at Summer League. I would like to see him play. That'd be great.
So yeah. Me and you both. I guess that's really it. I was going to ask you who your most interesting free agent that remains unsigned is, but that's like such an unfair question because I'm looking at the list right now. Would you go with Ty? Well, Tyus Jones is actually a legit free agent. Mm-hmm. So he remains unsigned. Gary Trent Jr. That's about it. There's not really much exciting on the horizon.
It's not scraping the bottom of the barrel quite yet, but we're definitely getting towards the bottom of that barrel.
Yeah, we can see the bottom. There's like some water left in the barrel, but we can see the bottom very clearly.
Sounds a little bit more hollow. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So enough preamble. Let's again close some loops from the last week. So I guess let's go backwards, actually. So the most recent news that we got is that Johnny Bryant is leaving New York's coaching staff. He had been the associate coach for the last 4 years. He was hired, I think, shortly after Tibbs was hired. He's now going to take the same role in Cleveland under Kenny Atkinson, who ironically may have been the runner-up to Tibbs for the job when Tibbs got hired. I don't really know how to speak about this because we haven't really gotten a whole lot of reporting about the inner workings of New York's coaching staff. Johnny Bryant's obviously the one that is up like in Tibbs' ear throughout the game, presumably talking about things like foul situation, minute totals, this, that, and the other thing. At the same time, the Knicks just hired Mo Cheeks, who is obviously a Tibbs, longtime friend of Tibbs, and has been a head coach in this league, like at multiple stops. He's like as seasoned a non-head coach as you're going to find on a bench at this point in his career. He's been through a lot, aside from the fact that he's in the Hall of Fame. So like I would just presume kind of he steps in Johnny Bryant's shoes. I know there's been a lot of stories over the last couple of years about Johnny's relationships with certain players, Emmanuel Quickly, certainly, Julius Randle. All that said is I don't know that I could sit here and honestly say like, oh, this is a big loss. I have no idea what to say. Maybe it is a big loss. Maybe the coaching staff is thrilled that he's gone. I literally have no idea. So I don't really know what to say about this. Do you have anything more intelligent than I just dribbled out?
I don't know what he's looking for. What I will say, kind of looking at this and asking questions. Okay, so Johnny Bryant was with this staff 4 years. Tom Thibodeau still in search of an extension.
Yep.
You could wonder, did Johnny Bryant feel like Tibbs is going to be extended here and I'd rather go somewhere else to get closer, even if it's the same position, to at least feel like I'm taking another step? Was it, well, maybe Tibbs isn't getting extended, but I get the sense that the Knicks wouldn't hire me as his replacement? Wow. Is it, I'm just ready for a new change? And I think going to a place where Donovan Mitchell has stayed, because we know the close relationship with them, that benefits him as well. It could be any of those. It could be none of them. To me, though, yes, I'm on the outside looking in about the coaching. I have no idea if this is something that benefits the Knicks or not. They clearly have a good coaching staff in general. So, and an eye for talent, I would imagine they've found a way or will find a way to replace Johnny Bryant. But I can't sit here and say this is a huge loss. And I can't sit here and say it means nothing because I truly don't know.
We don't. The one thing I guess we could point out is Bryant and Kenny Payne were the two guys that were kind of viewed at the time as like World Wide West hires and not Tibbs hires. Mm-hmm. Kenny Payne obviously is since he only lasted a year, right? Or a year, maybe 2 years, whatever.
2 years.
Yeah. But he's been gone, and now Bryant, and again Cheeks is in, and also we should note that I couldn't remember his first name. Rick Brunson was not initially on Tibbs' staff when he started the job. He was brought in midway through. So if you look at it like that, like 2 coaches out, 2 coaches in, end up with the same number. I don't know what else there was to say about this. So let's just move on. So continuing to move backwards, there was the flurry of activity that happened on, I guess it was July 4th. Actually, it was on July 4th. So we had the news: Dadiet signed his rookie contract. Fred Katz reported only 80% of the rookie, that salary slot where the max is 120%. So do the math. Knicks saving almost $1 million there. So good job by them. Also, there's a buyout, so he has no obligations for next year with what had been his, I guess, German team. And he will be on the roster, it seems. And then Tyler Kolek getting more guaranteed money. This is per Ian Begley than any second-round pick in NBA history. So it's nice by him. You would figure the fact that they signed him to a 4-year contract last year as a team option, that they have a good deal of belief maybe in him, that they're giving him all this money. And no other announcements. I'm assuming the other 2 draft picks will get 2 ways. McCullough and I swear to God, by
Huck Porty.
By April, I'll remember his name. I'm assuming they'll get 2 ways, but yeah, again, this is something where it's like, cool, nice job, taking care of your business. I don't really have anything else to say.
It's great to be able to create more room with Dadiet, especially as extensions and other money comes in with Kolek. It was great that they were able to give him that amount as a reminder for those at home. The team option was given because if there had to be the 4th year there, now the Knicks can decline it when the time comes for him to be a restricted free agent after year 3, or they could take the team option and he would be an unrestricted free agent in year 4. So great that they gave him a little bit of salary bump. That was something that was a concern of mine when the Knicks were still working within the potential of how are they getting Isaiah Hartenstein back. If they're not, how are they getting from a first apron capped team to a second apron capped team with all of that space? It made sense to pay him a little bit more. Also funny that he's making more money than Dadiet is in year 1, despite being picked, 9 slots later, but
25 and 34, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I'm sure those guys will have some interesting. I mean, Kolek's also a lot older. Like that is I feel like I could say this because I'm a man over the age of 40, but like Dadiet is a kid. He's 18 years old still.
He's a teenager.
He is quite literally a teenager. He'll be a teenager for another year. Okay, so all that got done, and then of course, last but not least, they completed the Mikal Bridges trade. Ended up being done with a Shake Milton sign and trade, and also sending Mamade Diakite to Brooklyn, taking back Dadiet, former Tibbs draft pick. We should note. I'll let you get into if you want to get into the salary mechanics. I'm not sure anybody really cares at this point, but that was done. It completed the trade, and here we are.
All I will say on the salary front is by using Shake Milton's money, it proved why Brock Aller and his team are Brock Aller and his team. Like that was such a smart way to go to go about it that way. So kudos to them. Other than that, if you remember last year, I was high on Keita Bates-Diop as a Knicks target. So it was kind of funny to see that full circle. The biggest concern that I had last year this time around was the shot. It was a small sample size of the shot coming around. Lo and behold, the shot did not stay. It was actually around 30% last year from 3. But in terms of having a 10th, 11th man, you could do worse, because if you feel like you're operating similarly to how Julius plays, there are some overlaps there. But yes, to your point, Keita Bates-Diop drafted by Tibbs, grew up with Jalen Brunson in Illinois. They played together, I believe. Just a solid defender whose offensive game, from the shooting perspective, never really came around. But I'm glad the Knicks were able to get it done. Glad they had more breathing room with the second apron as opposed to the first apron. And it sounded like, based on reporting, I want to say might have been Bagley, might have been Bondi, might have been Katz. So John, if you can let me know, please do.
What?
It was that this trade of getting above the first apron was always an option. This was always, like, from the moment the deal was done, it was communicated, we're going to work together to get us above that first round apron, and the hard cap will be at the second apron.
You know what? I shouldn't say everybody had, I think, versions of that report, but like the point is that like the Knicks were never like, if there's things I would do if I had more time, go find every one of those accounts that were like, sources indicate Deuce McBride's going to be involved for salary purposes in this trade. Yeah. Not so much. And then I get to the last thing before we get to cap or no cap, and I'm not, maybe this is a lead into cap or no cap, is the one thing that hasn't happened, which is the Knicks still have not secured the services of a backup center. Precious Achiuwa remains unsigned. You could argue, is either him or Paul Reed, who just got released by the Sixers, the best big men on the market. No signing, no trade. It's Mitch Sims. Give me the name one more time.
Ariel Hukporti.
Hukporti is like not that hard of a name.
I'm just glad you didn't call him Haktua, because that would have been the worst case scenario.
But now I'll remember it.
Great.
Because I'll remember
Excellent.
the Hawk. And it's not Tua, it's Porty.
Whatever helps. Yeah. You know what? Coming to a merch store near you, it's just it's her face and then a port and then the letter I and that's it.
Like a
or just,
porta-potty?
just an actual I. You know, that's it.
What? Sure.
Or it's an E because it sounds like Hawk Porty. So there you go.
Porty, sure. Okay, Hawk Porty. I'm gonna remember it now. Okay. On that note, Jeremy, what have you cooked up for us?
I do have a cap or no cap. I wasn't going to do one. Then it was actually asked if there were any more. I said no, and I decided, you know what? Actually, it does make sense for me to do one. So let's talk about centers, cap or no cap here. How might the center position affect the Knicks? For those of you who might have watched this was the same title graphic as the last one that I did during the Free Agency Frenzy podcast. Obviously, Isaiah Hartenstein has X's crossed out over him because he's not here anymore. So
Sad.
we move on.
Yeah.
This is what the Knicks current cap sheet looks like. The long and the short of it is the Knicks, including unlikely bonuses from Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, adds up to $173.2 million. They are $2.4 million above the tax, which is fine. They are $4.9 million below the first apron and $15.7 million below the second apron. So the absolute max that they could spend is about $15.7 million. Now, I think something's afoot here, and I'm going to just go into why. The Knicks have 12 players under contract. And there's a question of why have the Knicks not signed Kevin McCullough Jr. and Ariel Hukporti? Now, you said you assume that both will be two ways, and maybe that's the case. Maybe both do pan out that way. They're second-round picks. Jericho Sims was drafted 58th as well, and he was on a two-way contract. So maybe they both are in that boat. But if you signed both of them to the big league roster, it would bring the number of guaranteed contracts to 14. It would be 14 players with some or all guaranteed money. And essentially, it would mean the Knicks have to choose between Precious Achiuwa or any player that they would use Precious Achiuwa in for a sign and trade and the tax mid-level exception. Now, they could waive guaranteed money, but that's not really where the Knicks go. That's not something that they've typically tried to do in the past. Signing either second round pick selection would also lock the Knicks in and restrict them from being traded for 30 days. This is something that Fred Katz talked about before, where if you're the Knicks, you could sign one of these players or multiple, and then presumably because they're on the rookie exception and not signed with a minimum contract, they're not viewed as minimum contracts. And the question I have is, since they haven't been signed already, is there a risk of either player's rights being traded? There may not be, but it's still peculiar that neither has been signed at all. And maybe that changes, by the way, within the next however many hours of us recording this and people listening to this. So if it does, so be it. But as of this one moment, but if either had a salary that'd be helpful, they would have probably been signed already to expedite the process. If one of them is signed, it's July 8th as people listen to this, then that means the Knicks have to wait until August 7th to trade them. And I'm not saying it can't happen. It happened with LeBron and when Andrew Wiggins was drafted. It's just such a different scenario that it feels unlikely is all.
I have a stupid question, and it's stupid because I should know the answer to the question, and I'm asking it because I don't. It happens sometimes where players do not sign their contracts and then they play in Summer League, or does that not happen? Am I imagining that?
It's a great question.
Okay, so now I don't feel as dumb because
it's an injury factor.
Yeah, it's an injury thing, right? Like, why if you're a guy who hasn't signed a contract yet, are you going to go out there and play in Summer League and risk injury?
Probably not. And are you allowed to even play if you're not under contract? You have to sign some level of contract. I mean, the players who agree to play in Summer League sign a contract to play for the Summer League team. So I would gather if you're not signing any contract, then you're not allowed to play.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I don't really. Yeah, exactly. You have to sign some kind of contract, but
Right.
Yeah, I don't. I don't know. So regardless, I guess my point in bringing this up is one would think that by the Knicks take off their summer league on Sunday, one would think that by Sunday, these guys will either be signed or perhaps something else, as you may be getting to.
Definitely. And again, could either or both players be signed to a two-way? Absolutely could. But there's also the chance that one or both of them is not. Additionally, why haven't the Knicks re-signed Precious Achiuwa? When you look at the free agent market, with all due respect to B-Ball Paul, there aren't a lot of great options left. No. In fact, I think you could even make an argument that there are some players who are worse than Precious Achiuwa who have been signed away, and Achiuwa still hasn't.
Oh, certainly. We don't have to go through them, but there are definitely worse players than Precious that have signed a contract this summer.
Right. And so signing him would also carry a 6-month trade restriction because he wouldn't be able to be moved for a while. It really be December 15th, I believe, would be the earliest date for him to be moved. So if the Knicks are interested in bringing back Precious Achiuwa, but they don't want to sign him because they would try to move him now, then you're basically talking through a sign and trade, which to me is, are they exploring other options? And they said to Achiuwa, we're going to give you money. It's just a question of where you are. Are you here or have we moved you elsewhere? Don't really know. But if the Knicks are looking to make a move, it makes sense why Achiuwa has not been brought back yet. They've traded pretty much all of their pieces that would get them, some sort of sign and trade, like Shake Milton, gone. Diakide's gone. Jeffries, they could, but he's really not as much of an NBA player, whereas Achiuwa is.
So you're saying they could sign and trade Jeffries, is your point?
Depending on the rights, I think they could.
I don't see why they.
If they just did with Shake Milton and they didn't have any of his bird rights, so they could with Jeffries, but at least that's my understanding of it. But my question here is, how much are the Jazz holding up the market with Lauri Markkanen? Because truly, it seems like teams have put out offers and Ainge is kind of just sitting back, waiting for the market to get larger. I don't really know, but I feel as though he is really one of the big dominoes, and there's some others too. But even like the Spurs, right? The Spurs are talked about as a team, and they went out and they did this deal with cap space, to help the Bulls and the Kings.
Got a nice asset out of it too.
They did.
2031 pick swap is something I would want from the Kings franchise.
Exactly. So that's great, and they could do all of that. But if I'm the Spurs and I still want Lauri Markkanen, I can still use Harrison Barnes' salary. I can use other assets. The same could be said or similar of the Warriors or any other team that has expressed interest in Markkanen. But I wonder if he holds up so much of what's happening this summer. And there's a residual effect, which is if they are moving Markkanen first, what then happens to someone like Walker Kessler? Are they waving the white flag for Cooper flag ahead of time? Are they happy with Kessler on the team? I don't really know. And then there's another piece, and these don't all have to connect, to be clear. They're just things that kind of interest that I think should interest others. Kyle Lowry hasn't returned to the Sixers yet.
No.
It was a sort of thought of, hey, Lowry is going to be back. And he just hasn't. He hasn't re-signed. I'll pause there and get your thoughts on just this slide, because there's a lot.
I think the Jazz want someone to blow them away with an offer for Markkanen. I had a suspicion a couple weeks ago that the Knicks were like doing their due diligence on Markkanen. And I can't imagine it. If they did, I can't imagine it got anywhere. But like, I don't know. It seemed like the way the reporting was on this topic, it seemed like the Jazz it was very clearly telegraphed to the league, like, if you like, this person can be had, if you make a big enough offer. And the fact that we're still talking about this, or it is being discussed, like we're talking about, but it is being discussed. Like this hasn't gone away. We're hearing reports of like the Warriors like want to make a big offer, and like you mentioned the Spurs, maybe there's some other team or whatever. Like I guess the only other thought so that's one thought. The other thought I've had, which makes this even more interesting, is Danny Ainge clearly is not above going. I mean, Jesus Christ, how long did the Mitchell thing last? When did
September.
he get traded?
It was end of July, mid to end of July. We found out, and then September when he was actually moved. So
clearly, he has a comfort level taking this thing. Like if he feels like it is in of his best interest to continue, any discussions that are going on. And then how might that affect a team like the Knicks if there is some, as you say, if something is afoot? Well, I can't imagine Precious Achiuwa is going to want to wait around until whenever, August or September, to sign an NBA contract, because right now he's not signed with anybody. I wonder if those things are at odds, and if there is a point where the Knicks, whatever they may be involved in, which you're kind of implying here, maybe it's just like, all right, well, we can't wait anymore. But I don't know.
Well, I don't think the Jazz can move Kessler first. The reason being, if they do, 100%. It then all the other teams, while there wouldn't be waning interest in Markin, and the guys, we know you're tearing it down. This is our offer. We're not upping it anymore.
Can I just here's what I want to say. They could very easily tank with Walker Kessler on the team. Like, yes, they could probably get tank with Markin on the team again. Although I tend to think like that becomes tougher, just because again he's good and Hardy's a really good coach and they have talent on the team. You kind of need to, but like Kessler they could just keep. But with all the stuff that happened last year with Kessler and like the stuff that was coming out from like both sides' mouths, you would think that maybe they're trying to strike while the iron's hot.
They could. Also, what does his value look like on a tanking team? And if their play style, they got Filipowski. I don't think you should count on a rookie, especially one taken early in the second round. But Filipowski at least fits more of their clear-cut mold of maybe what they're looking for in a 5. Again, maybe. I keep going back to John Collins being the 5, where they liked at least optimum spacing at that position.
Yes.
So if Kessler is kind of zigging while they're zagging, does that help him? Does it help them? Does it make sense to move him now before it's like the way that we're building our team is different and we're losing and Kessler's not happy? It's not a reason to move him, to be clear, but it's also not a reason.
Yeah, like you want guys who are bought in. The Lowry part, are you insinuating that Lowry is in play for the Knicks?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'm definitely not. No, it was more just the domino effect of all these things. Okay. So,
what else we got?
In terms of acquiring talent, right? If the Knicks at this moment, because we know that they've talked 2 names that have come out. One is Nick Richards, the other is Walker Kessler. If the Knicks wanted Nick Richards and his $5 million salary right now, how could they get him? Well, as a reminder, taking more money in than sending out hard caps you at the first apron. So anything the Knicks do will be more money going out than coming in. Their options, as we stand this very moment, Precious Achiuwa sign and trade, Deuce McBride and Jericho Sims, and you can't aggregate Keita Bates-Diop, Tyler Kolek, or Hakeem Dadiet right now because Keita Bates-Diop was just acquired and can't be aggregated for, I believe, 60 days. Kolek can't be traded for another 20 some odd days. And Dadiet is in the same boat. But even so, I wouldn't see those necessarily as being the best options to move for Kessler. So, and this isn't even Kessler, this is for Nick Richards, who, like, I'm looking at it. Nick Richards is not worth Deuce McBride. No, and I don't believe he's worth any of the players that are, that you can't even aggregate in Bates-Diop, Kolek, or Dadiet, which then says is the only option right now to get Nick Richards, Precious Achiuwa, and a sign and trade. And at this very moment, it feels like it would be.
Yeah, and I think that if anyone listening is like, well, I think Precious Achiuwa is better than Nick Richards. I think a perfectly valid position to take. I think Nick Richards fits the typical center mold that the Knicks like more than Precious Achiuwa. He has some good rim protection numbers. He has some good rebounding numbers. His field goal percentage last season was off the freaking charts. So he does the stuff that they like their centers to do.
Right. And that's how they can get him. There aren't really other workarounds here. So I'm not skeptical that they want Nick Richards. I also can't help but wonder if Richards is being used as a way to lessen interest in Kessler. Like where it's not Ainge just being like, oh, you got one option here.
Yeah.
But similar could be said, of course, if the Knicks wanted Walker Kessler, how would they go about it? And it would really have to be Precious Achiuwa sign and trade or Deuce McBride. Like they can't aggregate other players and they don't fit. And if you're thinking, well, what about McCullough Jr. or Huck Porty? The Knicks can't move either of those players as salaries right now. They're draft rights.
You have to wait 30 days after they sign.
So financially speaking, moving them doesn't help in either direction. And maybe the Knicks do wind up moving Deuce McBride for a player like Walker Kessler. But the way they've also operated, and granted, this is Danny Ainge, so he's a tough negotiator. The Knicks have had a habit of taking players out of a rotation and acquiring a player in the rotation and adding draft comp where they need to sweeten the deal. So option number one, assuming there's no trade that happens right now. Well, the first thing, and these are more recommendations than they are anything, and you can ignore the price on this first one, but Precious Achiuwa, bringing him back on a descending contract, 3 for like $16.6 million. Why am I saying $16,560,000 in the spreadsheet? Well, really, or the PowerPoint, it's because I just started the salary at $6 million and then it descends. And the last year I would have it as a team option. No idea what he's looking for. It is a little bit richer than what we had talked about earlier, John, where I didn't feel like he was worth more than 4 or 5 million if it's ascending. And I still kind of feel that way, but the way that he's weighted and the cost for centers has gone up a bit. So an extra million, especially with the room that you have with the second apron, doesn't exactly break the bank. There's also the last thing. There's also the school of thought that people might have, which is we'll sign Precious Achiuwa to a large number. That way you can use him as salary filler and then you can kind of trade down. Like you could find Achiuwa at $8 million and then trade him later for Nick Richards at $5 million. And you could absolutely do that. But also there's a world where the Knicks just keep Precious Achiuwa and add to him as opposed to sending him away.
I just want to point out that if you're just like looking at the market, Saric, in terms, he only signed for 2 years, but in terms of annual money, it's essentially exactly what you have here for Precious. It's like 5.3, and then Drummond and Eubanks both signed for a flat 5 a year. So like, this is the market for this level of player. I don't think that's controversial.
And I think the second apron has, just the aprons in general, have squeezed the amount for role players down a bit, even though some guys are making nice money like in Orlando. But for the others, it's harder to get that amount when there's a cap on what teams can spend. So another thought here, right? Because this would bring the roster to 13. We've got 12 signed plus Achiuwa here. Signing a veteran to at least $3 million of salary using the taxpayer mid-level exception. And you might be wondering, well, why $3 million? Well, the veteran minimum salary for players who have played 10 plus years is $3,303,771. The problem, if you sign, I'm just going to use him as an example, not as a player that I'm looking for. If you signed Reggie Bullock, I believe he's been in the league for 10 plus years, correct?
Yes, certainly. If
you signed him to this contract, he would get paid that amount, but his cap hit would be $2,087,519. Which means that if you wanted to trade him, you could, but you can't stack minimum deals. So the thought process here is you give someone like Reggie Bullock that amount of money as a cap hit using a portion of the taxpayer mid-level exception. So his amount, he's earning the same salary he would have earned if he signed a minimum contract. But his cap hit is no longer deemed a minimum salary. So you have that extra cushion to, in this case, for example, get someone like Walker Kessler. If you had the veteran and Jericho Sims, right, that's Nick Richards' money. That's more than the $5 million, which doesn't hard cap you at the first apron. If you have just the veteran and draft rights and a draft pick or whatever it is, that's how you could get someone like Walker Kessler.
And there's a 3-month trade restriction on players signed in the summer, or am I making that up?
Believe it would still be 6 months.
Oh, it's 6 months. Okay. So forget about I said that. Oh yeah, that makes sense because of the December 15th thing is like the unofficial start of trade season. Okay. So this would be for like trading for Nick Richards like in January, basically. Right.
It would not be right now. This is if there's no trade happening this summer.
Got it.
And also I should mention it seems Puerto Rico is going to win, which means Rokas Jokubaitis.
It seems
Lithuania would be knocked out, which maybe he comes to Vegas. And then the last thing, it would be cool. It would be cool. And the last thing with 14 players on the roster here, you could sign one of McCullough Jr. to a standard contract and Huck Porty to a two-way. Whichever. My guess, it would be McCullough Jr. to the standard contract, Huck Porty to the two-way because the Knicks would have multiple centers and they would bring Huck Porty along the Sims route. So that's one option they could do. The other thing, and this is what the salary would look like if you did exactly what I talked about. If you had the veteran, if you brought back Achua at $6 million, and if you had McCullough Jr. as getting the lowest salary possible, the Knicks would still be $5.2 million away from the second apron. Plenty of room to navigate however they want. So option 2 would be, again, bringing back Achua for the same thing that we talked about. But then you could sign McCullough Jr. and Huck Porty to standard contracts. And you could give someone like McCullough Jr. at least the minimum of the second round exception, which is around $1.2 million. If you paired McCullough Jr. and Sims, that also gets you to Kessler money. So it's basically, if Kessler's still on the team and you want to reevaluate this in the winter, you have that option. You've prepared yourself using this summer to get you more money out the door than what's coming in. So those are essentially the two options. This is not what that would look like. This is just with Precious Achua there. And actually, it's Precious Achua, McCullough Jr. and Huck Porty signed to minimums where you have $7.4 million in space. So it's ways to be able to create opportunities in the winter. But of course, if there's a trade this summer, the deal would likely have to include one of Achua or McBride, which we talked about. If McBride were traded, the Knicks could then use the taxpayer mid-level exception to fill in for him. And of course, that's where we talked about someone like Kyle Lowry would at least make some sense. He's older than the Knicks have found in the past, but you could talk about Villanova, talk about player at the point guard while Kolek develops. I mean, talk about the 3-point shooting, leading a backup point guard spot. All he has to do is be that player, and the Knicks can afford to give him more. And worst case scenario, I mean, if they used 2 years on him, perhaps they could use him as salary fodder the second year, whatever it is. Like that is an option to pivot if you had to. Don't want to move McBride. Just thinking through if that were the difference and the Knicks did it, not for Richards, but for Kessler, that's then a way that you could use money that you have to bring someone in the door.
I don't want to step on the slide. Do you have any other names of players that are going to pop up on here?
The only other name I'd say is, and this is not on the slide, if the Knicks wanted to find a player who just had some level of NBA skill to do something, right? Like something they're good at. The two names that come to mind, one's a point guard and Cameron Payne, and the other is he was terrible last year at it, but a historically career-wise good catch and shooter, great catch and shooter in Landry Shamet. Either of those players that you use a portion of the mid-level on to get you from a salary perspective makes some sense to me.
I will just say, well, campaign for anybody who may not know, was recently arrested and apparently refused to give his name.
Yes.
In a traffic stop, which is kind of funny. And yes, Shamet is out there. I will just say, like, of all of the positions that you have guys still out there, you could argue that the most stacked is I use that term extraordinarily loosely, but is the point guard position, just from this perspective. Tyus Jones put aside because he's like, something's going to happen with him. He's going to get more than what the Knicks could offer. And that's an interesting hold up. Like, why is there a hold up there? Because he's like a good player. But like, Markelle Fultz is out there. Markelle Fultz was a starting point guard for much of the last several years. I know obviously he has his deficiencies, but he's there. You mentioned Lowry. Pat Beverly is a guy who like has experience with Tibbs. Like he's been on a lot of contending teams. And then a guy who, my God, if the Knicks ever signed this guy, that would be just high comedy. Like Spencer Dinwiddie is still out there. And again, like, you may not, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably do not like Spencer Dinwiddie. Spencer Dinwiddie's a guy who's been a starting point guard regularly in this league for a very long time. So like, there are players that if there was a world where the Knicks bit the bullet and were like, you know what, we feel this is in the best long-term interest of our team to go get a Walker Kessler. And yeah, it sucks that we have to give up Deuce, but that's the price of doing business. Between the veteran options that can kind of hold the fort for now that are out there, plus Kolek, plus potentially Rokas, it's like there's a lot of options out there, to say nothing of the fact that if you actually sit down and do the math, I don't know how any of these players are getting any playing time with the Mikal Bridges acquisition, because like they have a bunch of players who are going to want to play 30 minutes a night, but that's neither here nor there. No,
it's true. And CP reported that the Knicks offered Alec Burks a contract, and Burks turned it down in favor of, for less money, going to Miami. If I'm Alec Burks, not only is there more clear-cut playing time in Miami, I would gather the Knicks had every intention of using Burks in some sort of trade within the next 10 months, whatever February is, right?
Especially if, as you just explained on the last slide, if he turned down an offer for more money, that's a signal that he's not being signed to the minimum, which means that they certainly intended to potentially include his salary in some sort of trade.
Which then brings in the idea of getting a similar caliber player. I mean, you're not going to find a ton of guys who do what he does, which is really good catch and shoot. And
I mean, nobody knows what Alec Burks does.
Right. Like, I mean, just the clear chaos that comes from him. But there was an interest, and like, he's their type of player, and he said no. And then, the question here is, would the Knicks retain Achua if they brought another big? I mean, would he want to return if that were the case? If I were the Knicks, I'd probably structure it in a way of, we'll bring you back, Precious, and we'll pay you, but also we want a surplus of bigs. The question I have, though, is Stefan Bondi wrote an article, mentioned that Tibbs seems to like Achua more as a 4 than as a 5. If that's the case, I'm the Knicks, there's a good chance that I try to force the hand by using Achua as a sign and trade prospect to getting a 5.
Yeah. Like, here's the other part of it. Like, it goes hand in hand with the Bondi report. Kessler, Nick Richards, like Kessler especially. I mean, Kessler is like, if you created a Tibbs center in a fucking lab, it would be Walker Kessler. But again, Richards, not as good of a player, but he's like kind of cut from the same mold. The fact that these are the names that have been mentioned, to say nothing of the fact that, like, who else was mentioned before he signed? Drummond. Again, if you like, this is the sort of guy that Tibbs wants. So even though I have said many words on this pod over the last several weeks about inklings of the Knicks maybe playing a different sort of way, the reporting would seem to indicate that you are correct in that, no, they're going to keep going with the thing that they know and that they are comfortable with.
And I'm sure they'll play small at certain points, but
at times, yeah. But there's still a baseline. You have to get through 82 games, and then who knows what the playoffs are gonna require of you.
No. So in conclusion here, if the Knicks wanted to be done, they would be done. I don't think it's fully within their control. But the question, of course, is who or what are they waiting for to finalize their summer? How badly do they want a center not named Precious Achiuwa, especially if Achiuwa isn't really going to play a ton of center or is forced to be in that position? He may not be. They might have him be a 4. Candidly, think depends on who they match him up with, but hard to play him next to a non-spacer like Mitchell Robinson. And then finally, I mean, it's probably not nothing, but again, the Knicks haven't officially signed Kevin McCullough Jr. and Ariel Hukporti. Maybe both of those guys are on two ways. Maybe one of them is. Maybe both of them are signed to big league contracts. But we know how they felt about Tyler Kolek because they paid him. And I just wonder if the next contract, whether it's a two-way or a big league contract, is completely in limbo because of the Knicks trying to wait on something or someone else to make a move so that they can proceed. Because if they wanted to ink both of these players to a two-way deal, they could. If they wanted to ink both of them to an NBA contract or NBA contracts, they could.
Yep.
They haven't. And it just makes me wonder why, what's out there, what might they be waiting for?
I think given the talent that is out there right now, the fact that they like you're going far into the weeds on this stuff. I think you could have you had me at hello with Precious Achiuwa. Like the fact that they have not just signed Precious Achiuwa, which is the most obvious thing. Like use them at the 4, use them at the 5. Like you kick the can down the road, figure that stuff out later. They have his bird rights. It's they have it's not like it's going to impact they're not up against the second apron or anything. It's so obvious for them to do that. There has to be a reason why they have not done it yet. So whether something ends up getting done or not, but like I think it's pretty clear that they at least have something that they're considering. We don't know what it is.
No, and I gather it's Precious Achiuwa is going to get money either way. It's just a matter of where he plays.
Yeah, I'm again like we don't have to get into like what his line of thinking is. I do think it's interesting here that like at least on the Knicks there is a path for him to play minutes at the 4 and the 5, which maybe that's not. I'm like if you're a good team, you probably already have your rotation set. And if you're not a good team, are you going to give # meaningful minutes to Precious Achiuwa as opposed to like guys you just drafted or whatever? I don't know. He's an interesting young-ish player. I don't know if he's interesting enough and young enough for like a bad team to be like, hey, we think there's really something here. Let's continue to let's see what we got here. It's interesting. I'll be very curious what happens to him. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, it's 25. So probably not, I don't want to say he's hitting a ceiling, but I think the player that we've seen Precious Achiuwa be is
he older than Kevin Knox? That's the question.
He is older than Kevin Knox. Yes.
He's older than Kevin. Oh, wow. Well, that says something. Lithuania did in fact lose, by the way. So congratulations to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, I guess, is going to the Olympics. That's cool.
Wait, actually, you know what? Yeah. He may not be. He is younger than Kevin Knox by a month and 8 days. I stand corrected.
You're kidding me.
No.
That's pretty wild stuff. Can Kevin Knox play in Summer League? I don't think he can.
He is. He's playing. He's playing for the Warriors.
He's going to play in Summer League for the Warriors? That's good. You know, good for Kevin.
Jarrett Culver's playing in Summer League. It's not like a two-way. You can.
Who's Culver playing for?
I don't remember.
I'm going to look it up now because I know that didn't the Knicks attend a workout for him or something recently?
He participated in a workout that they had.
That's what it was.
He's playing for the Magic.
Oh, look at that. Cool. Good stuff. Okay. Before we go, did you want to do a little look ahead?
Let's look ahead. Just before we look at anything,
sure.
Let's talk through what is left, right? Because we talked through the immediate present, or I guess immediate future. But then there's also the Jalen Brunson extension
season
that he's eligible for. Julius Randle is eligible for an extension in August. And of course, there's Tom Thibodeau, who is eligible for an extension and just has not received one, which still kind of perplexes me. But that's essentially where we're at. Now, the Julius Randle isn't eligible till August. Jalen Brunson, it's July 12th, I believe. That might be the date. Does that ring a bell to you?
Yes, I believe that is the date.
So here's just my thinking while we're kind of ruminating on it. With Julius Randle, obviously, there's doubt about him taking the extension. My question, though, is who do we think is offering him a full max contract in a year?
So,
and last thing, sorry,
yeah.
Who do you think is offering it? And will that be an appealing team to him?
So it's funny that you looked at it from that angle, and I'm spoiling a newsletter that I have coming later this week, but that's fine. Because for just to put some numbers on this, and well, actually, no, before we even put numbers on this, it's interesting that you phrased it the way you did, because are you assuming, because this is what I took from the way you just phrased that, are you assuming that the Knicks would want him on the max extension that they could give him right now, which would be 4 years and $181.5 million?
I am assuming that the most important thing that the Knicks would want to do is get him under an extension.
Okay. And do you think that they would be comfortable with the max extension number that I just mentioned?
It's a lot. But
you're on the fence. You've answered the question already.
But here's the thing. It depends on what they want, because the thing that is most important to the Knicks, and I'll show what the numbers are in a second, is team control of Julius Randle.
Absolutely.
So I believe, because if they get Julius Randle on an extension, they can move him if they needed to. Because the one thing that I've been hearing for the last 2 weeks, week and a half, whatever it is, since the Mikal Bridges trade, is the Knicks are all in. They're all in. That's it. And I keep thinking, well, sure, the Knicks are all in right this moment. I don't see them moving other pieces. But a year from now, they still have assets. They still have players. They still have deals that they can make. That's really where it goes down to, and why I think for them getting someone like Julius Randle on an extension is going to be so important.
I completely agree with you that if the Knicks, that unless there is a trade out there that we don't know about, and let's all come clean, folks. We've all done it, trying to find the Julius trade, the magical Julius trade that makes everybody happy, the one that doesn't fucking exist. Unless there's something out there, which I don't think there is. I don't think you think there's anything out there right now either.
Right now, no.
No, right now, right, to be very
this
clear,
moment,
right
no.
Yes, no. Then I think they would very much like to have him locked up on with team control past this year, and that's why I'm like, I wanted to nail you down on that, because I actually, at the end of the day, I got to tell you, I think they would sign up for the max that they could give him right now. And that is only because when you look at that number, and $45 million a year sounds like a goodly amount of money, because it is. In the current, people are going to get tired of hearing this, but like in the current cap environment, it's really not. It's not like it's a lot, but it's not you're dead in the water. It's not like, wait, we have a Bradley Beal team option we have a Bradley Beal player option for how much money when he's how old and he plays like how many games a year? Like, there are levels to this stuff. Would it be a good contract? No. Would it be a desirable contract? I don't think so. I don't think people would be knocking down the Knicks door to acquire it. But like, I think they would stomach it, because the alternative is to go into next summer without him under any contract. And all you have to do is look at the last 5 years of players that enter the summertime where their incumbent team has been either or both hesitant to extend them or give them a new contract. Like obviously we just saw this play out with Paul George and DeMar DeRozan, but at the same time, like maybe never liked the offers that they got if they were listening to offers and thus took it to the summertime. And how many of those teams have gotten anything that was worth a damn? Like the Bulls just got 2 second-round picks for DeMar DeRozan. Like what did the Raptors get for Kyle Lowry? They got Precious and not much,
pick, right? Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't any like none of these teams make out great. And sometimes there have been teams that have just been happy to let the guy walk. Like the Celtics were all too happy to let Gordon Hayward walk several years ago, but like it still was maybe not ideal. So I just, for the life of me, I can't imagine the Knicks want to put themselves in that position. And here's the last part of it. And this, again, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. If they do put themselves in that position, or let me rephrase that, if they are put in that position because perhaps Julius Randle does not want to sign for 4 years and $181.5 million, then will they be forced to pay him more than that, which is what we're looking at? You want to talk about crazy money? He could sign for a starting salary in 25, 26 for it's 50, was it 52 point something million or 53 million?
I think
that's 45%.
6 because he wouldn't have 10 plus years of experience. So it'd be
he's not a 10 plus year max guy in next summer.
I don't believe he is.
Oh,
he was drafted.
You're probably right.
I might be wrong though, because if he was drafted in 2014, 15, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, he would be. He would be. I stand corrected. So yeah, it would be a
10 plus year max.
Like, right. So the question is, how many players or how many teams would have the cap space to sign him at that amount, and where it would make sense for him to be there? Because the team like the Nets, right?
Yeah,
they could have ample cap space. They could walk in with Ben Simmons' money off the books, and they could do exactly what like they tried to do in the restricted free agent market, but to the Knicks, trying to leverage their pick situation, say, hey, it'd be hurting the Knicks if we gave a max offer and all that. Like, they could do that. Of course they could do that. But if you're also Julius Randle, you're thinking, what do I gain? Like, yes, I get more money, and that's important to me. Sure. But I also go to a team that's clearly losing, that maybe also doesn't fit the play style that he has, and that could turn him around, trade him on a dime. And now the Knicks could very easily trade Julius Randle next year if something happens. But it feels like there's at least more control in Julius's mind if he were to stay with the Knicks versus go to them, go to the Jazz. The Rockets might be in a position where they, for whatever reason, open up cap space to sign someone. But also, are the Rockets going to go after Julius Randle at 31? Maybe they do. How does he fit FVV though? With Fred VanVleet, how does he fit Şengün, Dylan Brooks? It's clunky. Perhaps they go after someone like Ingram, who's at least a better shooter. Like all sorts of these thoughts of what are the teams, like what is, just takes one, but what is the team that gets Julius Randle away because money is that important to him at that stage? And also, if you're the Knicks, do you find a way to compensate with Julius by saying, we'll give you a trade kicker so that if we do trade you, you're compensated? Because that to me is almost like a win-win. You're Julius, you're making a lot of money, you've got a role in the Knicks. You get traded, that sucks, but you're at least paid to be traded. I believe he has a trade kicker in his contract right now.
Oh, maybe he does. Maybe I'm not even sure. No, I agree with you. It's highly unlikely. And I think the current Brandon Ingram situation is very instructive to the point that Ingram is what is he, 26? He's a guy who's made an all-star team. He's 24, 5-5, pretty good efficiency, you know, for like the shots he takes and whatnot. But he's a very imperfect player. Like if he's one of your top two guys, how far are you going? Well, probably not very far. How does he function as a third guy? Not great. Have we had this conversation before in New York over 18 times over the last several years? Yes, we have. Is Randle a better player than Ingram? I believe he is. And I think most Knicks fans, even people who are a bit hard on him, would agree with me. Mm-hmm. But the fact that like there doesn't seem to be, maybe, who knows, maybe he could get traded for a bunch of things. Well, before this podcast post, I have no idea. But there doesn't seem to be much of a market for Ingram because it has been stated that he wants a max. and teams are just like, well, we're not going to do that because we just don't want to put ourselves in that position. By that logic, you would think that there is no team out there who is going to want to pay Julius Randle what his full max is, even over 4 years, because again, it would start at that number over $50 million and they could still give him 5% raises. I just like, man, we just watched the fucking Pistons pay Tobias Harris $26 million a year. Who the hell knows? Like that's like, who the hell knows? Which is brings me right back to where I started, which is if the Knicks could get him to start on the dotted line for 180 to 181 and change, I bet you they would do it. And I'm going to say something. I'm make a bold prediction right now. I don't think he would take it.
Okay. I mean, the other thing to keep in mind here is if his his unlikely bonus gets guaranteed, that might also up the salary even more, because that would be a cap hit that raises, and then it would be 140% of that. So it's even more money in his pockets if he were able to make that.
They could guarantee more of the unlikely bonus?
I believe so. Well, no. It's I'm saying if he hits that criteria, I'm wondering, does it hit?
Oh, okay.
Is it like retroactive where it then gets more money?
And just to be very transparent, OG Anunoby just got $42.5 million per year. Randle on the max he could sign for on August 6th would get more than that. He would get 45 and change a year, but it would also have to factor in this year's salary. So if you actually did the math and you added it all up, it would come to like a little bit less. I think that number means something to Julius. I think being the highest paid player on the team means something to Julius. And again, I have I have no knowledge of any of this. This is just me guesstimating.
I hear you. And he would still get that done with if he were able to be extended. He would still be the highest paid player. Might
on the extension.
Correct.
On if you just took the money for the extension, average annual value of those 4 years, yes, he would be the highest paid player.
Exactly. But then going into next year, he would be the highest paid player, the 2025 season, because OG is making 39.6. So Andrew, if you're able to share, I just want to showcase it. So this is what the current cap sheet looks like for 2025. It's got Julius Randle at his max 40.5 million. OG making his money 39.6. Jalen Brunson, assuming he were to sign, he'd be making several $1,000s under 35 million. Mikal Bridges is earning 24.9. Josh Hart 19.4. Mitchell Robinson 12 or really just a shade under 13. DiVincenzo a shade under 12 million. Deuce McBride 4.3. Tyler Kolek 2.2, and then Pacome Dadiet, that's 2.8. And when you look at that, that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players. 10 players under contract. They'd be $6 million above the tax line. It'd be $2 million in first apron space, and it'd be $13.9 million in second apron space. Thank you, Andrew. The main thing that I just want to talk through, and this is the last thing I'll say before we really get into it. How would you rate Julius Randle? Like in terms of talent, right? Across the board. And I know it's so difficult to do because it really depends on the game.
As an NBA player, like where would I rank him in the league?
Yes. He's two-time All-NBA player who was on his way to a third. After that rough start, he was on fire.
I think he's unquestionably... Can't say anything is unquestionably with Julius Randle. I think all things considered, he's a top 40 player, and there's probably a pretty good argument that he should be in the top. No. Can he be in the top 30? I think that there are enough questions about him that I don't need to, everybody knows what those questions are. Where, again, there's just like outward skepticism around the league that like Julius Randle is going to be a top 2 scoring option on a championship team. That's why there's this skepticism that he's going to be here on whatever the final version of this Knicks team is. And if you like, the fact that conversation exists is why I'm trepidatious to be like, oh yeah, he's definitely a top 40 NBA player. I think he's top 40 though. I'll say that.
It's fair. And we're getting to a point where I believe teams are starting to show more restraint in terms of what they're offering. And that's going to impact the market. Like Brandon Ingram, I don't know if he's going to get the full max. Some team could say, like the Pelicans or a team that acquires him, we love your game. We're not giving you a full max. Like it's just not happening. And I wonder if similar would be said to Julius. But I'm just curious because this all kind of, I've been thinking about this before, but this also plays into it. It's fascinating to me that the Knicks have been rumored to be looking primarily at inexpensive bigs this year and the following season. Both Kessler and Richards are under contract in the 2025-26 season, the one we just showed, for small amounts.
Yep.
Why?
Because they're trying to stay under the second apron for 2 more years.
Why?
I feel like this is a trick because going over the second apron is bad.
I'm leading to somewhere. But there's no issue with going this year. The Knicks can't even go over the second apron.
Yeah, no, I know.
Next year, obviously, they could. The rule is you can't be over the second apron 2 years out of 4. But the salary cap is also going to keep rising because of the TV deal.
To me, the further we go into the distance, the more unknowns there become. Like if Dante, for instance, Dante, we're sitting here, Dante DiVincenzo has 3 more years left on his contract. He is, I'm almost certainly not going to extend off that number because the most he could extend for is like $16 million on like his next deal. So like, right? Did I say?
Well, but then therein lies the question of if he's with Villanova, if they're all taking extensions, if he's coming off the bench, like at what point is he truly fine. Like, what I'm saying?
It's possible, but I also think there's a world where this team, again, like you can't talk about one thing without talking about the other. If there's a world where they make a move and Dante DiVincenzo goes back into the starting lineup and he's back to playing 30, 35 minutes a night, and we're looking at him 2 or 3 years from now and he's like, oh, he's become one of the premier 3-point shooters in the league, which by the way, he was last year. Mm-hmm. Well, all of a sudden, Dante DiVincenzo in the freaking cap environment in 2027 or 8, whatever it is, what the hell is he making? So like, all of these salaries could keep going up and up and up. And I think the longer you can avoid having a season over the second apron and the longer you just punt it down the road, the better off you'll be. That's the overly simplistic answer.
Sure, but that also implies that they're comfortable with Julius Randle being their option forever, which they may not be.
Why are they comfortable with Julius? If they extend Julius Randle, which again, I'm proposing that they would be in favor of doing this summer, why would they be basically signing up for a lifetime contract of Julius? Because like I think you could still move him. Like you said it, they can move him.
But that's what I'm getting at. Yeah. If the Knicks are using his salary, yes, we could talk about other players and their salaries and how that helps, but there's still going to be room for $40 whatever million that Julius has.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So there's that, but there's other contracts on the books that could be moved, like Mitchell Robinson.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Right. So, but all I'm getting at here is if you take something like Julius Randle and if you take Mitchell Robinson and you take any other salary that you need and you aggregate them, what does that do for you?
You're capped at the second apron.
Right. So it may not just be spending. It might not just be because they're trying to be focusing on how does other money come in with the extensions. Guys are going to get paid.
I understand what you're saying.
All I'm getting at is
I get it.
There may be a hard limit, not a self-imposed limit that comes from it. And that's all I'm saying. It's like, why is Jalen Brunson taking that much of a discount? And also, does that pressure Julius Randle to take a discount? Because Jalen Brunson's extension didn't stop OG Anunoby from taking less. It didn't stop Isaiah Hartenstein from going to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
There are other options there. It's just the question of if the Knicks were hard capped, why would they be hard capped at second apron? It's not because they want to use the tax mid-level. It's not because they want to send out cash in a trade. It's not because they're acquiring a player using a traded player exception that was created, thanks to another sign and trade. It's aggregating multiple players. So all I'm getting at here, because you also then think about, well, the all-in moves and what do the Knicks do? What can they do? Pick swaps are really valuable. That's the new currency. The Spurs just did it.
Sure.
If you're looking at picks that are pick swaps years in the future, and any other of the remaining protected first-round picks, if you haven't moved one of them for, say, Kessler or both of them or whatever it is, adding a package that's as large as you can, and you have the outgoing money that's greater than anything incoming that impacts any other stars that might hit the market. Because as a reminder, Damian Lillard, what was the cost of him?
It was Drew, and how many picks were in that trade? One or two?
It was Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
Grayson Allen, 2029 unprotected first, and two swaps in 2028 and 2030.
So a future first and two swaps.
So the question comes down to, how do you value Julius Randle? How do you value Mitchell Robinson? How do you value any other names like Deuce McBride? Are you grooming Tyler Kolek to be replacing players? Are you holding off on Rokas to come over? That's all I'm getting at here in terms of why the Knicks are all in thought is a nice thing to have in the moment. But there are other exit strategies in mind. And I look at a team like Phoenix. I look at a team like Milwaukee. I look at all these other teams. And if you or anyone listening to this wants to say, Jeremy, you're fucking nuts, it's not going to happen, go ahead. That's fine. I'm not saying these are like, it's guaranteed, put it in stone, the Knicks are getting these players. All I'm saying is that it goes back to the conversation we had, which was, yes, the Knicks, Dolan wants to put a contender together. But you know what's even sweeter than a contender? It's a contender led by more box office names. And if there's a way where you use swaps and assets you already have, I really don't think that Brock Aller was like, you know what? I'm cool overpaying for Bridges in a vacuum, purely in a vacuum, and having no exit strategies whatsoever. This is our team. I'm telling you, they have to have other ways to try to get talent in the door, whether it's next year or the year after.
And I
but
think
it's
it was
just something to consider.
And I think it was purposeful that the last swap they traded in the Mikal Bridges trade was not the 2020, was not the 2030 swap. It was
Correct.
The 2028, because they're a year away from being able to put the 29 swap and the 30 swap and the 32 swap. And between that, again, Randle and Deuce and maybe one of the kids that they just drafted, like Pops, like all of a sudden you got a real, and then, if they could actually, well, they're probably not going to get Pistons pick next year, but like, maybe that pick becomes a little bit more real, a year from now, which I think it will. But I think the last thing I'll say, I think in terms of like, if you're projecting the level of player that sort of a package can get you, I don't think it's going to get you an A+ level star. I think it's going to. So if Giannis or like Devin Booker or someone is at one end of the spectrum, the other end of the spectrum for me would be the Bradley Beal trade that just happened, where that was for a bunch of swaps, a bunch of unprotected swaps. But there was also no player of note going. Correct. I mean, it was Chris Paul, but like he was not viewed as like an asset, like a guy who you're going to value on that contract that he was on. Now there was the no trade part of that, which made him even less marketable, I guess. But I think like a Julius centric package of the sort of thing that we're talking about would get you like the level of player that's like right in between those two. So I'm imagining someone that's maybe a little on the older side, has a mammoth contract, obviously north of $50 million, and maybe can exercise some leverage and is comfortable exercising some leverage about like, hey, I want to go here. Maybe a player with not a whole lot of years left on his contract. Like that was the other thing about Dame Lillard going to,
sure,
he had 3 years left. So like he may not have wanted to go to Milwaukee, but who cared?
Damian Lillard was also number 3 in EPM the season before he was acquired.
Oh, I get it.
It's age. Yeah. I understand it. But that's why I'm just comparing. It's the level of player plus at least a pick that we're agreeing is tangible, plus pick swaps down the line, plus Mitchell Robinson, who we're seeing as like a starting center, plus Deuce McBride, for example. Like, all I'm saying is that is a very compelling package to a team that cannot tank. That's it. More probably have to go into it. I'm just getting it. Like, that is, if you are the Knicks, that's where you are trying to start the conversation because of the aggregation. It's why you're inquiring about cheap bigs. It's why it came out about Isaiah Hartenstein. How much of that money was guaranteed? It was like $10 million or so that was unguaranteed. Like, there are telltale signs of reasons why that the Knicks want to be under the second apron. And it's not just financial. It's not just because of spending.
Totally. 100%. They want to be able to aggregate salaries, which again, I think everybody should pay very close attention to what happens in early August. And because like everything you're talking about is possible if you got Julius Randle under contract. It's not impossible if you have to sign and trade him, but it becomes a whole lot more complicated. And I think they would like to extend him. And I'm curious if they are going to be able to do that. And if they're not, what then? That's my biggest question. Yep. What happens if Julius is like, nope, I want to see what my market is. What do they do? I don't know.
Definitely possible. Maybe
we'll find out. We'll see. All right. I don't have anything else. Do you have anything?
I've talked enough.
You never talk enough. Do you want me to say who the 12 final countries are for the men's basketball Olympics?
Please do.
So I'll save the US for last. Group A, Team Canada, Team Greece, Team Australia, Team Spain. Man, that's
jeez.
That's pretty freaking good. I mean, like, SGA, Giannis, who's the best Australian player? Patty Mills? I'm kidding. Group B, Germany, the FIBA champions, right? Didn't they just win? Yeah. France, the home country, who would not have qualified if they were not the home country, but they're stacked. Brazil and Japan.
Do you think we're going to get another round of Fournier Schroeder?
I mean, it's possible. It's certainly possible. And then Group C, USA, Serbia, how you doing? Puerto Rico and South Sudan. I don't even know the rules. It's 12 teams. How many teams emerge from like the group stage? 8? 4?
It's a great question.
6?
Well, you'd have to win your stage, and so that's 3 already.
Yeah.
And then I think that there have to be quarterfinals and or at least quarterfinals, so which would imply at least 8. But then maybe it's do teams get a bye?
I'm just looking. I'm already excited for USA versus Jokic. That's fucking cool.
That will be a lot of fun.
That'll be a lot of fun. And then we'll see where we go from there. So yeah, something to look forward to. The Olympics start in less than 3 weeks. Pretty cool.
Fun times.
Andrew's back.
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm just gonna make a quick announcement if I can. We've got some live streams coming your way later this week, and Jeremy will be, as of now, it's the finale of Cap Rules Everything Around Me Cream on Monday night. And then I believe Wednesday night will be the next KFS X's and O's with DJ and Benji. So they'll open it up to the mailbag, any X's and O's questions about what the Knicks might do, what they might look like with this new look roster. Please bring your questions on Wednesday. Casual Friday on a Thursday. We'll be live on Thursday. A lot of this live stuff this week is because I'm going on vacation in less than 12 hours. So hopefully the extraordinaire Kev Words, my AP will be on the ones and twos. And then, of course, we got Summer League live streams coming your way next weekend. The first game is on Saturday. We'll all be in attendance, but Chris, I believe it's Chris and potentially one other person will be hosting a post-game live stream. So you can check that out live on Saturday. And if you haven't yet, please check out the season finale of Draft Class. Chris and Kevin broke down the 4 players that the Knicks just drafted. It seemed like we were culminating to this moment that for 3 years, Chris sat here and did the hardest work possible previewing the draft. And they didn't draft anybody. And then they didn't draft anybody. And then they didn't have picks. And then finally, they drafted 4 players to break down. And we've already seen a great reception to that. But check it out if you haven't yet. The season finale of Draft Class. It's available everywhere you get Knicks Film School Podcast. This podcast, actually. So, yeah, I believe that's it. That's all from me.
Jeremy?
That's it. Excited for cap rules, everything around me. Tune in. And if you're in Vegas, hope to see you there.
Yes,
With
I will.
An announcement on that coming in the not too distant future of like a meetup. We mentioned we're doing something with CP. We're nailing down the details. Just if you're going to Vegas, you want to meet up with Knicks fans, next Sunday night would probably be the night. But more on that officially coming later.
I already made a restaurant reservation at a notable sushi spot in Las Vegas for before that meetup is now tentatively scheduled to happen. So it'd be really great if we could do the meetup on that night. And
when did you make said reservation?
A few days ago.
So after
we
we
knew
already made the plans and knew about it.
Yeah, but before the meetup, I'm parlaying the dinner into the meetup. I'm going to do the dinner first, then I'm going to come to the meetup.
What's the concern?
So what's the issue?
Because my aunt and uncle are babysitting the kids for our night
bringing Mrs. Macri to the meetup.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like, I have a conflict.
No, if there needed to be, if the
That's
meetup was a different day, then I wouldn't.
Jeremy, we did the same math there. Oh my gosh, he forgot that we already made plans and made plans anyway.
No,
not like we have a calendar or anything.
I'm milking the babysitting. I am getting dinner out of it, and I'm getting the meetup out of it. This is what you have to do when you're a parent. These are real life concerns. That
One
someday
day.
both of you may become aware of. All right. So yeah, more information on that when it becomes official. But that's it from us for today. We will be back. More fun and games before you know it. Peace out.